This is part 2 of my Classic Guitar Licks program. To get extraordinary results, you must do something extraordinary in your preparation. Otherwise, if you just do what comes naturally, you'll end up with average results. Your outcome will be very similar to others that do the absolute minimum by following the typical path. That is pretty much the definition of average. What can separate you is to make an extraordinary effort in the amount of time that you practice. If you dedicate more time to studying and playing these licks, you will move beyond the ordinary. But there's another way to get extraordinary results. Practice in a different, more efficient manner. Practice while using tools that the average, less focused, less technically inclined would never use. You can get 2 hours of results out of 30 minutes of practice by using the right tools. To do so, you may need to move beyond your comfort zone, but it's well worth the effort. Here's how I practice these licks for top performance. And by top performance, I mean things like when I'm getting ready to record the video for this lesson, or I'm writing a lead and I really need to work on phrasing and such. Anyway, so this is how to reach your top performance. And haters of technology, you might want to just fast forward through this section because it does not apply to you, and that's okay. Guitar Pro allows you to output the audio of the tab to a WAV file. So first I create a WAV file of the entire lesson, all 25 licks. I also only output the guitar parts, which means the hi-hat beat that I'm using as a metronome is muted. Then I open my recording software, my DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. I set the tempo to the same as the Guitar Pro tab. For this lesson, I set the tempo to 90 beats per minute. The audio file is then dropped onto a track. I move the recording to line it up with the measures of the DAW, the Guitar Pro track. Since the tempo, 90 beats per minute, is correct, I'm able to use the metronome in the DAW because everything lines up perfectly. I set up a second track to record my guitar part. Next, I create loop points for the first lick so it repeats endlessly. I pan the Guitar Pro track left and my guitar track right, then plug in headphones. Now I can clearly hear the original lick, the Guitar Pro lick, along with my guitar. The original in my left headphone and my guitar in the right headphone. Then I press record and play along with the loop until my guitar matches the Guitar Pro track. Once you've got a good take, listen to it. This is an amazingly efficient, effective way to practice and will give you extraordinary results. It's also a great way to copy songs. Let's begin part 2 of Classic Guitar Licks. The following 25 licks are all pentatonic. Let's begin with lick number 26. Well, that's the end of the pentatonic section of this program. Next week, we'll play natural minor and Dorian minor licks. See you then. This is part 3 of my classic guitar licks program. This week, we'll cover Dorian licks, then natural minor. The last few licks are missing the flat 6th tone and the 6th tone, so they're not natural minor or Dorian minor, because these tones define these two modes. All the tones in these licks are common to both natural minor and Dorian minor, so you can use them with either mode. Although this is the end of the Classic Guitar Licks program, you're not finished yet. I review all of these at least once a week, and you should too. I'll see you next week. Welcome to week 40 of the Complete Basic course. Now I haven't announced any week in the past because I'm leaving it open to change the weeks around. However, at this point in the course, I'm pretty set on weeks 40 through 48 because they contain, good news for you, the most difficult exercises in the entire course. So, this is going to take a lot of practice, and even though you should be able to accomplish, well, I call them weeks 40 through 48, but in reality, they might be the next 2 or 3 years. This stuff is hard, and it will take a lot of practice, repetition, and just hanging in there to get each one of these exercises down to the point that you will eventually be a graduate of the metal method. We're going to start with Tell the Truth, a song that I wrote in 1986 and recorded it then. Got some radio airplay out of it, which was pretty cool. Anyway, we're starting with the rhythm part. It's not difficult. So you should be able to get through this pretty quickly. It starts off like this. Next, we'll do the B section of the verse. Starts off with an F, muted. Simple enough. Then it plays the 4th and 3rd strings, rides the 5th open, and then the 5th and 4th. Very simple, but you've got to get that right. You've got to play the right strings. So here is exercise 2, the B section of the verse. Next up is exercise 3, the chorus of the song. Here it is at normal speed and then slow speed. Moving on to exercise 4, and just a little heads up here. To actually do this at tempo is really difficult. It's probably the most difficult single lick in the entire course. So this is going to take massive repetition. You will probably find that you will not be able to play this at 110 beats a minute in a week, possibly 2 weeks, or even longer, just depending on how much experience you have playing guitar. If you started the basic course about a year ago, this is going to be difficult. If you started the basic course a year ago as a beginner, how's that? This is going to be difficult, but take it a step at a time. Start off at 60 or 70 beats per minute, and gradually over time increase speed. Now I want to show you one of the really tricky parts about this. I labeled the tablature open position and closed position fingering. Now, closed position is 1 finger per fret. So it's all nice and neat. Open position is something like this. So you're covering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets instead of 4. Makes it a little bit more of a reach and kind of difficult at first, but the reason that I have this change from closed position to open position is once you get the hang of it, you will be able to play it faster. Here I changed to open. When you're trying to get up to speed, let's say you're practicing it at 80 beats a minute, do some tremolo picking, 16th notes, and tap your foot. Notice that I'm playing in groups of 4 16th notes. I'm not going, I'm actually. So let's say I'm playing at 70 beats a minute. So I'll play the tremolo picking at that speed. And once I've got it down with the right rhythm, then I'll start to lick. So that way you're playing with the right rhythm, you're tapping your foot to the beat, and you're actually learning it in a way that with repetition, gradually over time, you will master this. But it's a difficult lick. Like I said, probably the most difficult lick in the entire course. Now we're going to do exercise 5, and exercise 5 is the complete rhythm track. Here we go. That's the end of this week's lesson. The key to this, as in most of my lessons, is repetition. Practice the exercise number 4 daily. Try to do it for at least 15 minutes each day, and gradually over time increase the speed of the metronome by a beat or 2 a day. You will reach a point where you can't move beyond it very easily in a day or 2. It might take you a week to move from 100 beats a minute to 101 beats a minute. Anyway, that's just the nature of this, but repetition is the key. I will see you next week with a song I wrote called Beyond the Gate. Today we're going to do a track that I call Beyond the Gate. It's a very nice melodic piece, 95 beats a minute, not too fast, and it's in G minor. The cool thing about this piece, and one of the reasons that it's at the end of the course, is it will test your skills with many different techniques. There's a tapping section, there are touch harmonics. There's a little bit of everything in this. So let's get started with exercise 1. It's pretty straightforward. There's not very much in it that's difficult, but to do it accurately and to sound professional, there are some things that you need to pay attention to. One of them is getting the bend right. And there's not much vibrato, so you actually have to hit the note. You might want to practice by playing it while looking at a tuner to be sure that you're stretching it to the right note and you're stretching it to or bending it to a C. That is followed by a pretty quick little riff. But all it is the 3rd position of the pentatonic scale. See, it's just the 3rd position of the pentatonic scale. Okay, here is exercise 1 at normal speed. Then I play it really slow for you. Now here's exercise 2, and there's a little tricky stuff in here. We start off with a slide to the 3rd string 7th fret, and then hammer on. I use my middle finger so I can hold the pick, right? So I hammer onto the note, pull off, so the 3rd string's 7th fret sounds. Then this is a slide. Okay, here is exercise 2 with the tablature. Now we're moving on to exercise 3. Nothing really tricky about this, all standard technique. Still, you got to get the bend right. Fingering is important here. That is the end of this week's lesson. It's not all that difficult. At the same time, as usual, you're going to have to spend some time with repetition to get these parts down. Some techniques are a little difficult. The slide, tapping, pull, and then to do that in time with the rhythm of the song, it's difficult. So, aside from that, it's pretty straightforward. We will continue with Beyond the Gate next week. See you then. First, I'd like to open up this lesson with a brief explanation. You may have noticed that I've been wearing this shirt quite a bit. It's not that I only have one shirt. Let me explain how I recorded this stuff. All of these exercises toward the end of the course are difficult even for me to play accurately unless I'm playing a lot. So the way I approached all this stuff, and it might be a hint as to how you're going to have to approach it, is I practiced and played intensely for a couple of weeks, and then I recorded all of the guitar parts for lessons 40 through 48 over a 2-day period. I wanted the look to be consistent, so I wore the same shirt. Now, in order for all of this to make sense, well, I'm recording all of these parts in a couple of days too. So it's not that, I have a hygiene problem. Well, maybe I do, but that's not why I'm wearing the same shirt. Just thought that I explained this to you. Anyway, so let's move on to Beyond the Gate, part 2. And we're starting with exercise 4, which is the last part of the lead. Now, it starts off with a chime. You lightly touch the 5th fret and chime both those notes. Then the next part is called an ostinato. And an ostinato is a fancy term for you keep playing the same note over and over again, and add notes to it. You're writing the open G. So here's the ostinato. There's nothing else that is too difficult in exercise 4. Aside from, some people will actually have a little bit of a problem with the very last measure that has eighth note triplets. So just pay attention and keep those in time with the rhythm. Here is exercise 4 with the tablature. Exercise 5 is the rhythm track that this lead is played over. So maybe you can get one of your friends to play the rhythm and you can practice the lead. So here it is with the tablature. Exercise 6 is the complete lead, which is exercises 1, 2, and 3 from last week, 4 from this week. This will be challenging and will take some practice. And once again, this is probably not a lesson that could be mastered in a week, but it's a great exercise. So check it out, exercise 6. That's the end of this lesson. Next week we begin the part of the course that I call Step by Step, and it's weeks 43 through 48. And these are some challenging exercises, but once you've accomplished them, you will be a Mental Method Complete Basic Course graduate. Something to look forward to. See you next week. Now we begin the test. This is what you must master to say that you have completed the course. So it's challenging, as you'll soon see. The tempo is 130 beats a minute, and there are a lot of sequences throughout this part, as well as you're tested with many, many different techniques. Of course, hammer pulls, slides, and bends, and everything else. So you got to be really on your game to master this stuff. There's nothing too challenging about exercise 1, so let's get started. Here it is with the tablature. Exercise 2 starts to get a little tricky. Trickiest part about this is keep from bending the string because you don't want it to go sharp. It's real easy to go. And that doesn't sound too good, does it? I've done it before, and I have to admit, a lot of times when I'm playing it, I will notice that I'm pulling the string a little bit, so you got to be really solid. Now I'll play along with the tab. Okay, that is the end of week 43 of Step by Step, and I haven't explained what step by step means. This shows you how you can step by step put pieces together to make something very, very complex that in the end almost looks impossible. You don't do it, all at once. You do it step by step. So each one of these exercises is a step that must be mastered through repetition to add up to the completed piece that we'll have with week 48. So, repetition is the key. See you next week. Welcome to week 44. I assume you accomplished week 43 or you wouldn't be here, because I don't want you to start working on this week's lesson until you can play last week's lesson at 130 beats a minute. And that's true of the rest of these lessons. Don't move beyond each one of these steps until you got it mastered. Now, as you're studying, like last week, you're doing exercise 1 and 2. You don't have to get exercise 1 to 130 before starting exercise 2, but I want you to try to get as close as possible to exercise 1 and 2 at 130 beats per minute before moving on. If you're able to get it up to 120, I might let you slide. But anyway, so hopefully you're up to speed on last week's lesson. Here we are at exercise 3. And exercise 3 is a sequence, a pattern of notes. And you're going to see a lot of sequences throughout this lead. So that's the sequence. Here's exercise 3 with the tablature. Exercise 4 isn't fast, but you've got to bend to pitch and you're very high on the neck. So that makes this exercise rather difficult. I recommend, as I've mentioned before, plug into a tuner, make sure that you're actually bending to pitch. Here is exercise 4 with the tablature. This week's lesson was very short, however, it's difficult and will probably take you much more than a week to master. So you've got your hands full. Repetition is the key. Keep moving forward step by step. See you next week. Wow, I'm impressed. You've actually mastered everything up to this point at 130 beats a minute. I didn't think I was going to have to give this lesson. Okay, good. Wow, I'm proud of you. You can do this. So let's continue. Exercise 5. It's actually pretty difficult because it has a little chromatic section. And also, when you're doing hammers and pulls, it's easy to get in a rut of doing all pulls or all hammers. I mix it up a little bit here. I throw in a couple of hammers at the beginning, and then here's the chromatic. And that's tough at 130 beats per minute. Here is exercise 5 with the tablature. Exercise 6 isn't too difficult. there are a couple of eighth note triplets that can throw you because people are accustomed to playing either eighth notes or 16th notes. And when you throw a triplet in there, it changes up the rhythm enough that it can be difficult at first, but just play along with the animated tab and you'll get it. So here we are with exercise 6 and the animated tab. That is the end of week 45. Congratulations for making it this far. I am assuming that you have done everything up to this point at 130 beats per minute, or at least 120 beats per minute. Okay, I'll let you slide. But eventually you're going to have to get it to 130 beats a minute to have accomplished the complete basic course, to be a graduate. So I will see you next week. Week number 46, step by step continues, and repetition, repetition, repetition. See you next week. Welcome to week number 46. Exercise 7 starts with a sequence, and I'm going to try to explain something about how I play sequences clean. Okay, to keep it clean when I'm changing from the first to the second string, this first finger is actually lightly touching the second string, muting it. That way when I move to the second string, I hit it cleanly instead of you hearing it kind of ringing in the background or even feeding back. So then when I get to that, getting ready to move to the third string, I do the same thing. I'm slightly touching the third string with my first finger to mute the note. And you proceed on down the sequence in the same fashion, always slightly muting the lower string. And I'll even do things like this. If you look at my picking hand, to make that clean there, I'm cramming my fingers in the strings to mute them. I've got the palm of my hand on the 6th and 5th strings. Otherwise, you're going to have strings feeding back, especially if you're playing it loud. You can play it, direct into your computer, not into an amplifier, and it will sound clean. But as soon as you stand in front of your amplifier with some volume, the strings will start ringing unless they're properly muted. Here it is with the tablature. Exercise 8 is difficult, and I'll show you why. This slide. So. I almost missed it there. That's difficult to do at 130 beats per minute, which you'll soon find out. That's the end of this lesson, a very short lesson, however, a very intense lesson to actually master these 2 steps at 130 beats per minute. So next week, we will work on the last 2 steps of the lead, and once you've accomplished them, you are a graduate of Metal Method guitar lessons. Of course, you're going to have to run it by me first. I've got to make sure that you can play this from beginning to end at 130 beats per minute. So I'm looking forward to watching your YouTube video. See you next week. Welcome to week 47. We're covering the last 2 steps of my step-by-step program. Exercise 9, right when you thought it couldn't get any more difficult, by golly it can, as you're going to find out. Hopefully you've already gotten all the rest of the steps up to 130 beats per minute. And if so, time to move on. Here's exercise 9 with the tablature. Exercise 10 is the last step in my step-by-step program. Not quite as difficult as the previous steps because it's really almost the same as exercise 1, aside from a very fast run at the beginning. Once you get past that, you're almost home. Here is exercise 10 with the tablature. Well, that's it. You have accomplished my step-by-step program, and you are welcome to submit a YouTube video of you playing this from beginning to end.
for my viewing pleasure. How's that? Send me a YouTube video. Send me a link to a YouTube video. I'll take a look at your playing, and also I'll have a few other questions to make sure that you've learned previous information in the course. But anyway, congratulations making it this far. We have one more week to go, and in week 48, it's simply playing step by step from beginning to end. And I said simply, it's not really that. See you next week.
Although this is officially the last lesson in my complete guitar course, there is no end. You'll be reviewing these exercises and techniques as you continue this journey. In this last lesson of the course, we're going to take the 10 steps that you've learned in the previous 5 lessons and combine them into the completed lead. Now, to accomplish this is a daunting task for most guitarists, but not for you. As I've mentioned many times during the past 5 lessons, this stuff is mastered a step at a time. Although each of the previous 5 weeks only had 2 exercises, most of these exercises should be divided into several sections, and loop these sections and practice them until your fingers bleed. For those of you that are frustrated because you can't master this even after weeks of practice, you need to go back and work through the course again. Get all exercises up to speed before attempting this step-by-step series. Record yourself playing previous exercises and listen closely. If you can't identify the problem, schedule a private lesson with me or one of our other instructors. We can quickly identify technique problems that may be holding you back. If you have recording software, put your playing under the microscope. Analyze your bends. Are you constantly flat or sharp? Visually compare the backing track or click track to your guitar track. You should be able to clearly see if you're ahead or behind the beat. Although the tempo of this piece is 130 beats per minute, most of your practice sessions should be much slower. I recommend starting at 90 beats per minute. Although your muscle memory is very fast, it must be trained slowly. Near the end of practice, move up to 100, 110, 120, then 130 beats per minute in rapid succession. Here's the last exercise and your final test in my course. Step by step complete. You have just completed my third major revision of the course. It may not be apparent, but you have benefited from my interaction with students over the past 3 decades. I've always looked at this course as simply answering student questions, and many of these questions were asked by my first generation of students way back in the 80s. Now it's your turn to give something back that will help future students. If you have an idea, question, suggestion, or criticism, I want to hear it. Post it on our forum so other students may be involved in the conversation. Each time I revise the course, I'm reminded of the value of even the simplest exercises and techniques. You see, as I record the course, I'm forced to do a detailed inspection of my playing skills, and I'm not flawless. Let me tell you, not even on the simplest exercises. That's why constantly reviewing the fundamentals that are taught in this course is so necessary for continued improvement. If you believe that you've mastered this material, I want you to schedule a private online session with me, and we'll review your skills and overall knowledge. Impress me, and I'll reward you with a certificate of completion. See you on my next lesson. It's been fun.